Hi everyone, welcome to JMC Jams Season 4 Episode 6, and we've got a very special guest in today, all the way from San Francisco. We have Philia Beroud, who will introduce herself in a few seconds, tell us a little bit about who she is and what she does, and actually what the heck is she doing here as well, right? Well, Philia's come to work with our students in the branded content class today, and Wednesday as well. The reason for this is because this is Earthweek, and so we're trying to kind of do projects and assignments and exercises based around developing our knowledge and our experience of sustainability, sustainable practices, and Philia combines sustainability and branding and is doing a bunch of work around the sustainability goals, right?
That's right, John. Thank you for having me today. Welcome everybody. It's an honor to be here. I've been in advertising for over 20 years. A lot of my career took place as a freelancer traveling to different places, but mainly in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and then in California. And after the pandemic, it was really clear that this is not sustainable, the way we are living on this planet. And we're here for Earthweek. So I had the honor to come here and speak with the students a little bit more about sustainable branding. What is sustainable branding and how can you practice sustainable branding? Well, the sustainable branding we've been talking about, and we're talking about this week, is alignment with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Mm-hmm. And these Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals, were adopted by the United Nations in 2015. And actually the United Nations started here in San Francisco. Not many people know that.
Yeah.
But the birthplace of the United Nations is here in San Francisco. And that's what catapulted me.
Even though they're headquartered in New York.
Exactly. And that's what catapulted me into sustainable branding once we got through the pandemic, and knowing that San Francisco is the birthplace of the United Nations. This is the place where there's a lot of tech. It's known for Golden Gate Bridge. It's known for technical innovation. We're here in San Jose. We know about it. But there's not a lot of attention towards sustainability and sustainable branding. And you see that there's a rise towards this. There's an award in Cannes, the Lions Festival of Creativity, the SDG award that has been introduced. So it is growing. And I'm really thankful that a school like yours is taking the time and the energy and the effort to invite people like me to teach sustainable branding here at school.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we can drill down a little bit deeper into that for a second, are we talking about educating brands to engage in sustainable practices, or are we looking at the nuts and bolts of the branding exercise, as in like so related to technology, but say for example packaging? What is it that you're doing exactly within your organization?
All right, thank you for asking. Well, of course it depends on the brand, the project itself. We work directly for brands. You can apply aligning the SDGs directly to brands, to a mission statement, to the values of a brand, or to, like you just said, packaging, for example. Or looking at your value chains, like how do we produce, how do we connect with people from start to finish? And how do we produce? How do we create this experience? Are we conscious? If you look at sustainable branding, it basically touches upon 3 levels. Economic success, sustainability for the brand or organization. Ecological, so good for the planet. And for society. So it needs to touch upon those 3 areas for it to be in the category of sustainable branding.
Right. So company success is like on a level pegging with meeting those goals as well. So really what you're trying to do is to create a tide change within corporate structure. Am I right?
That's right. And exactly. And that includes communication. So training advertising students, PR students, journalism students to incorporate and think and have the practice to apply sustainable thinking in their day-to-day job.
Yeah.
Because it's a matter of practicing. We talk a lot. It's wonderful we're talking, but the actual difference is in the doing.
Absolutely. And so if we think of an example where as an ad agency we're working with brand X and we identify that actually their target audience is turning away from them because we know that they're polluting, that their production or their manufacturing pollutes the environment, right? In whatever capacity. Is it our job as advertisers to tell them how to change their practice, or should that start elsewhere, do you think?
I think it's a hand in hand. It's we used to think 1 and 1 is 2, but nowadays 1 and 1 can be 11. If we really join forces and we do things together, our impact can be so much bigger.
Yeah.
So it can come from different areas, from different people, but it needs to come from all these places together in order for it to have a real big ripple effect. And that's what we need right now. We are really having the urge to do more sustainable branding and to create more positive impact in our world on a societal and on an environmental level is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm taking from that is that what we are avoiding by doing this is greenwashing, which of course was an issue. I mean,
big issue.
Less of an issue now maybe as corporations kind of latch onto your ideas and your thinking.
Yes, this is a big point that the United Nations has been bringing up themselves as well, that greenwashing is a big problem in our industry, and it still is. We need to call each other out, we need to hold each other accountable, we need to not do these practices, but unfortunately it still happens, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course it does when left and right do not align.
Even more so.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I mean, that's super interesting, something that really does kind of concern me. And I think that, in terms of lots of Cannes having an award now, lots of in the Lions Festival for like sustainable brands, and actually lots of advertising for sustainable organizations, maybe we need to have one of those kind of like alternative award events that calls out the bad guys, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it could be like the Dirty Advertiser Award or something like that.
That's a great idea. That should be there. Yes.
Maybe we should do it. I'd be down to do that.
Okay, let's really do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I think it would be good. I think it would be good to kind of just call them out. Let's stick with brand X. You're saying you're doing all of this good for the environment, but really you're not, and your advertising is saying this. That's wrong.
Peanuts. Maybe we have the peanut gallery.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this is all great, obviously, and I see that what you guys are doing from your small little enclave in SF is trying to create change, which is the people that we've spoken to this season, have in their own small ways been kind of advocating for change. And if all the little guys get together, we can form a great big pyramid, right? I mean, that's ultimately the aim, I guess, to kind of bring about change if we all do our bit.
It's true. And this year marks the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. I already mentioned that they started in San Francisco, not in New York. But it's a global roadmap. The SDGs are a roadmap for 2030, the part of the 2030 agenda for sustainability. And we really all need to do this together. And having Earthweek, having this year being the 80th anniversary, maybe is some extra fire for us and some extra fire for the industry and the creatives to start integrating and applying SDGs to their work, whether it's on your mission, whether it's in your supply chain, whether it's the packaging, wherever you do it, wherever it touches upon your industry. If you can make that change, I urge us all to make that change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've been mentioning the SDGs, the Sustainability Development Goals. Can you tell us a little bit more about those? And the one that we're focusing on in
yes. So there are 17 goals. They were set in 2015, went into effect in 2016. 194 countries unanimously decided to go for these 17 goals. These 17 goals, they work together. It's not just a single goal that doesn't work with the other goals. For example, SDG 17 is partnerships for the goals. This urges people and organizations to think about partnerships. Because we cannot come up with solutions by ourselves for all these big problems. So we all, brands, creatives, need to work together to create that pyramid. So back to this week, we were focusing on SDG 14, which is to do with life below water. But for example, there's access to clean drinking water, zero hunger, education. Everybody on this planet should have, we're here in a school, should have access to education. So these are these 17 ground rules, these ground goals, directions that 194 countries that are part of the United Nations have decided are pivotal for a sustainable future on this planet.
Yeah, and it's good to see them coming in, into our creative space here, and students engaging with it. Specifically, the Life Underwater one. What are they working towards with this one?
Well, there's a lot. 70% of our planet is water, so there's a lot of our, the challenges we face nowadays with plastic, with air pollution that's coming back through the water. A lot of the problems are actually manifesting themselves right in the water, and a lot of animals are having issues with this. We're drinking the little bits of plastic that are in the ocean from our bottles, and we still don't know how to deal with it. So the students have been working with, some of them are coming up with AR, some of them are more analog, more event-based activations to create awareness for this SDG, for SDG number 14.
Which has almost been like sort of the theme that we've had in this season. We've spoken to Surf Rider, we've spoken to the cigarette surfboard guys. That there's been a lot of lots of conversations around the ocean. Why? Because it's so important. I mean, so the ocean sustains us, and we often forget that we're sending rockets up into space, but actually we don't even know half of what's below the water surface, right?
It's true. Yes, it's true. And the amounts of plastic that are piling up at the bottom of the ocean and the overfishing, we're really, sometimes it seems like we're taking all these natural resources too much for granted. But, we might be kidding, but we're not joking. Our industry, we can send out powerful messages using the power of our voice, the power of our industry, creative communications, to create awareness for this, and not only be, finger pointing, but also make it interesting to make that step to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. Finger pointing just doesn't work. We saw that with the anti-smoking campaigns, back in the 80s, I guess, and rather than the 70s, and it just didn't work, I mean, it was like, well, don't tell me off, don't lecture me, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yes.
But when it came to education, and suddenly we started to see diseased lungs on cigarette packets, then we begin to kind of see an impact. Once you actually, it's getting through to you. Yep. And sometimes we need to shock people in order to make that happen, right?
Yep. Well, I hope that many younger generations, but also all sorts of generations, are starting to think about sustainability in a way that really fits them.
Yeah.
And whether you're a news writer or you want to go into PR or you're a copywriter, you can make that difference on every level.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great that you're working with the branded content class, actually, specifically because they're covering all of these different things. And like you said before, different ideas, right? An event or AR activations or whatever it might be. That's what we're thinking about in there, It's like, well, how can we get this message out through the best possible means? So what's happening on Wednesday? Are they going to be completing their projects?
Yes, they're going to be completing their projects. So they're working on an awareness campaign for SDG number 14, the Life Below Water goal from the 17 SDGs set by the United Nations. And they will be presenting their solutions to each other in pitches.
Yeah.
Yes. May I ask you a question, John? Why do you think it's so important to teach the students here about sustainable branding?
Well, for me personally, sustainability and the environment is a key driver. This is what kind of gets me up in the mornings. It's like thinking that just the importance of it. And it was like many years ago when I started to get involved in advertising education, right? I was working in this particular field. And talking to students about the great commercials, the great ads, and for brand X or brand Y, and lots of something inside me started to kind of not gel. And it was that whole idea that, in a way, we were helping to create these great big trash piles, right? And at the time when I first started teaching advertising, rather than just like kind of, practicing within a field, Adbusters became a thing. Don't know whether you're aware of Adbusters, but they're like, they're kind of, basically they're a guerrilla group, made up of anonymous, it used to be anonymous, like, creatives and strategists and so on in the business who were donating their time to basically come up with spoof advertising. They used to have lots of financial support, so they were able to rent billboards, rent billboard space, and they would put these lots of spoof ads on there. Joe Camel became Joe Chemo, and it was just like such a great idea, taking the icons and kind of deconstructing them and sending out sort of an alternative message. And so they did a lot of this, and I thought, well, essentially, there's a lot of people in the industry who believe the same things and can make a difference. And our communication is so powerful that if we can sort of encourage young children to smoke, right, which is effectively what icons like Joe Camel did.
Yeah, we can do the contrary.
We can do the opposite, and we can do good. In other words, we can harness the power of our skills, our art, our craft, and do something good with it. And so this is why I believe it's so important to be not just celebrating Earthweek and saying like, what a wonderful planet we live in, but actually
every day
activate and encourage lots of this. Every generation, I made it my mission basically that every generation of lots of advertising graduates I send out there would have some kind of lots of ethical switch in their minds that would help them to make a decision in one way or another, but at least plant that seed that says, this is what's happening.
Yeah, be aware.
Yeah.
And know how to work with it. Know how to work with sustainable branding. Know how to make a brand sustainable. Be able to advise your brands, your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know from lots of connections, friends that work in the healthcare side of advertising, which sometimes does get a really bad rap, and sometimes rightly so. But sometimes, what we see goes beyond lots of those cheesy commercials. Mm-hmm. They do tend to advise lots of the drug companies about how to maybe consider lots of the human side of treatment or the human side of technology, and helps them to kind of helps them to work with their brands so that they can create products or apply technology in a way that sometimes will make a patient's life easier, more manageable, that will help them to connect, that will be emotionally driven.
Right.
And this is kind of like where we are. I think that we can make a change.
And I do think that we almost live in a more interesting time to practice our profession than ever before. It's just the world's gotten smaller. We've got media to connect the world. We've got multimedia to our disposal. So it's a really, really good time to try to make that difference.
Yeah, and ultimately it comes down to a decision, right? Sure, you got to make money for the man, but can you change the world for the better as you're doing that? Mm-hmm. Hopefully we can,
We hope so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. The next episode, actually, I'm going to be bringing in a couple of the students involved in the workshop so that they can talk about their experiences and what they came up with. So it'll be really nice to follow up on that. But thanks so much for coming in, Philia, and doing this. And I'm super excited about Wednesday, and I'm sure the students are. That turnout this morning was amazing. So that was that's testament to the interest that's been generated by this. So
I'm really glad to hear this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. And just remember that it takes an individual to make a difference. What you do does matter, because the more individuals that get together and do things on their own will actually help to make a greater impact than if we just sit there and think, what I do isn't important. It is important. So I'll leave you with that thought on Earthweek, that actually we didn't mention this, but Earth Day started here at San Jose State. There is a car buried down by the Students' Union that was the first symbol of the movement towards environmental change.
That's huge.
We started it right here.
Congratulations.
So let's make more change from here as well. Okay, until the next episode, we're signing off.